It's not just guns that have developed. Most rifles today wear optical sights of some sort. But telescopic sights have been around for more than a century. This unirdal scope is a prime example. Scopes were prized by one group of American riflemen.
In the American West, buffalo hunters used telescopic sights. And then later target shooters began to develop them. And the stronger they were, the more effective they were. This particular scope is a 16-power target telescope. For the time in which it was developed, this was high-end technology. And unirdal developed that kind of reputation. And early scopes like this are almost impossible to find any longer. They're highly collectible and considered to be an astute investment. This is a recoil spring that helps, first of all, protect the scope from the recoil impact, but it also returns it to zero after the rifle has been fired. It almost looks like a makeshift kind of a device, but it is very precise and very effective.
Scopes have come a long way in more than 100 years. One of the things we have now is very repeatable controls. Our target scopes now are great. You have windage, elevation, even parallax on here. Let me show you something you can do with a target scope, and you need to do this if you're going to be doing long range shooting, because of course when you're adjusting this, you're adjusting up and down, and you can feel the detents. It's going click, 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 and say you turn it around. But now you say, I want to go up 14 clicks, I want to go back 14 clicks. Well, you used to have to count 14 clicks, 14 back. Now we have a way of zeroing out our turret, getting it to where it's absolutely repeatable. And all we have to do is what we call slipping the turret. Right now, it clicks. But if I loosen these Allen screws in here, we've got 1, 2, and a third one over here. All right, I've loosened this. Now watch. It doesn't click anymore. So we're not actually changing the adjustments inside the scope. So once we get it to where we want it and it's sighted in just right, we're going to turn this back until the 0 is lined up with this index mark right there. And once we've got it all set up, then we're just going to tighten this up again. And now we're locked in on our 0. And now when I turn it, we're back to doing clicks. We can turn it up, and then we can turn it back and go right back to 0, and the rifle's still sighted in. So you really need to know how to slip your turrets when you're first getting your rifle sighted in. It makes long-range shooting work for you. Concealed carry, especially today's great pocket guns. It's a brand new phenomenon, right? Think again.
One of the most interesting things about the resurgence in pocket and compact pistols is that it's deeply rooted in history. And it actually goes about as far back as the 1700s with flintlock pocket pistols like this one. This is a John Joyner flintlock screw barrel pistol in .44 caliber, and it was made around 1764. And it was actually one of the early, they had pocket pistols, they had vest pistols, and boot pistols starting in the 1700s. And then in the 1800s is when you get a different surgence of pocket pistols thanks to a man named Henry Derringer, a Philadelphia man who became famous for his small, large caliber single shot pistols in the 1850s. And we actually have several Henry Derringers right here. Including one of these in .41 caliber. The standard caliber for Derringers was .41, but they did tend to have varying calibers. And this gun was so popular that it was imitated throughout the late 19th century, and that's when you get a little bit of confusing term. You'll hear the Derringer. If Henry Derringer made it, it was spelled D-E-R-I-N-G-E-R. And if it was an imitation, it had 2 R's in the middle of that. And so that's a little trick that we have to know whether or not it was actually made, because Henry Derringers are actually incredibly rare. In addition to this single-shot small pistol, we also had a lot of multi-barrels. There were Marston 3-barrels with even knives that retracted from them. And you also had Sharp's 4-barrel pepperbox pistols that were popular in the mid to late 19th century. And then, of course, the revolvers that started to get into the kind of small gun game. And one of the most notable of that is the Smith & Wesson Ladysmith, which is behind me. The Lady Smith was developed in the early 1900s, initially in a .22 caliber. Some of the early ones were very small, used an M frame, and then some of the later versions used a little bit larger J frame. And Lady Smiths were actually so popular that Smith & Wesson in the 1980s had a complete resurgence of the brand in a little bit larger of a caliber, for example, 38 Special, 32 H&R.
Coming up, the semi-auto pocket guns of yesterday and today.